right, so we're here in another episode of Sex Sense, and today we have two amazing guests, and we're going to talk about the importance of healthier relationships. We know we have heard about this before, but we don't know a lot about it. And for that reason, we're bringing two amazing guests. Diana is one of them. Please, if you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about you. We're very excited to have you. Please.
Well, thank you, Farron, for inviting us here today. My name is Diana Sandoval, and I am the program manager for the Asian Women's Home. What I do for that program is I work with contracts, data, training, education, and outreach. And we feel that for us to participate in this podcast, the definitions of what domestic violence is and intimate partner violence is very important in making sure that everybody's aware of what that important topic is and how to identify it, address it, and, just really understand the complexities of violence, especially in our homes and with our partners.
Thank you very much. What do you know about healthy relationships? Do you mind telling us a little bit more about it and like boundaries? Yes, to expand on that, because a lot of people doesn't know what that means, and a lot of us, there has been a moment in time and that we have jumped into a relationship, and sometimes it's not as healthy as we think, and that could lead us to depression. It could lead us to put ourselves at risk, and not only our lives but our health. So it's important to kind of like to learn a little bit more about it.
Well, I'm going to take you on a wild ride about healthy relationships.
Okay.
So back in the day, it was really just, when I say back in the day, maybe 20, 30 years ago, a relationship was just really respect, rules, understanding, and that understanding really came from the home. Mm-hmm. So your parents really taught you what it was or what it is to be in a relationship, respect, love, admiration, just really to be in a relationship. But that didn't really resonate or really understood what a relationship was. It was just basic, what was it called? Not rules, but...
like basic knowledge or
basic knowledge, but also values.
Values, there you go.
Home values, personal values, and
cultural values.
Cultural values, just manners, right? But it didn't really address the health of a relationship. And if a person didn't get that knowledge from home, where were they going to get it? And back then, you couldn't find information on a relationship or what it was. It really just went back to your values and manners. But now, in this day and age, healthy relationships really is broken down in many components, in many process, both personal with your partner, but also with everyone else that you interact with. Candice, who is joining us today too, has a wealth of knowledge in the healthy relationship.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'm gonna give you the history of what that was. So when we taught healthy relationships, really we taught values, we taught manners, we taught self-respect, and the kids didn't get that. We taught that in middle school, we taught that in high school, but now we really need to lay the foundation of healthy relationships from when the child is born, as a toddler, in elementary setting and forward.
Other things that we want to talk about or kind of approaches like the red flags, the circle of abuse, the cultural and social influences. Do you want to talk a little bit about it? How do you see it, or in your own perspective, something that you have learned while working as a program manager for domestic violence, something that you have learned about this topic, so the importance of educating other people?
Well, healthy relationships is one of the key topics that we must bring forward. Everybody's looking for it. The school settings, the criminal justice settings, family in the home with the families. Because as things move to now, in this day and age, things change and they look different. But it really just goes back to how do we interact. In today's culture, especially in the past couple of months, it's very angry. People are acting out, lashing out. And how do you then navigate those muddy, chaotic, toxic waters if not to have a strong hold on healthy relationships, right? Because you're going to have to really, it's like walking through a minefield and really just how do you get to the other side with your health intact, safety protected. I think it's to me it's just as important in knowing what domestic violence or intimate partner violence is. And now that I'm in this position, I see the need for it. I see the importance of it. And now that we're moving forward with contracting and working with the state and the federal government, they are seeing that a child's first not interaction, but the first when they see violence, it's in the home.
Correct.
And it's also when they're young. So how do you get that child to really understand what he's seeing is violent, and then how do you then protect him and give him that education to navigate through this process?
And that is one of those things that we don't really understand, or we don't really pay attention, that sometimes we see domestic violence at home, right? And we don't see it as domestic violence, but because that's the only thing we know. And then we jump into a relationship. So since we see it so normal, we don't see that we are actually being a victim of domestic violence, or we are doing that type of harm to our partners, the partners that we love. So it's very important to kind of like understand that part.
And the child is looking at violence and it's vicarious for them. So they see it, they're not a part of it, but they're changed because they saw someone they love hurt someone they love. And so they're going to be impacted by that. And if it's an ongoing relationship that they see, they're at some point going to notice or figure out that that's not healthy. But it does change the child. I believe that when you are confronted with that, a child is going in one way, and here is vicarious violence, and their inner DNA makeup changes it, and they go in a different direction. And that's what's tragic and important to address.
And that is kind of one of those things of like circle of abuse, like you see it in your home, then you carry it. And if you do not have the knowledge or the education related to healthy relationships, it's very easy for you to repeat and to continue the cycle, correct?
I agree, yes. Or also, not so much repeat it, but maybe the person is changed and maybe doesn't know how to manage a relationship from that. So at some point, they're either going to shy away from an interaction, because when you're in a relationship, there's times that you have to have these very complex conversations. And so some people just may not have those, because you can have a conversation and still let it be in a loving, safe, open environment, and then resolve an issue. But if a child doesn't have, or someone doesn't have the strong skill sets to navigate a relationship in a healthy manner, then it can be negative. It can be violent. It can be critical, right? Because you don't know how to navigate those emotions.
Correct. And one of those things that we talked early and we mentioned, and it's very important, is the cultural and the social influence. You know, for instance, if you come from like a Latino culture, a lot of things that we know they're not okay, or it's some type of abuse, it's perceived as normal, and that we can bring that to our future families or to our future loved ones.
You know, that's very, very, it resonates right now with me because I did come from, could be categorized as a violent family, although it was never physical, it was always verbal, right? And you know, you had your uncles and your aunts, and there was always cuss words, and I never thought that they were cuss words. I thought they were normal words. And so I thought, she just called me da 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 da, right? But then I'm thinking, hey, that's mean. Before, I'm like, oh, she's just telling me to pick up my toys. Yeah. But in the manner that she said it, now I know that it was verbally abuse.
Correct.
And also emotional. And so, now that I know better, because in life, when you know better, you tend to do better. Right? So now that I'm, a mom and a grandma, I make sure that my words are in an even keel. I'm not yelling. I don't cuss at them. I make very sure, right? Because, you absorb some of those old behaviors, but it's important that they are impacted by what I was impacted by. And I come from a family where there's a lot of men. And so those men were, they would dismiss you because you're a female. If you had something to say, they would dismiss you. And then they would give you like commands. And we're like, why are we going to the grocery store at 10 at night? It's because he wanted something to eat at that time, right? As before, now you're like, no, dinner's over. You want something to eat, there's the kitchen, right? So those things I'm trying to change, but they still resonate. And when they resonate, to me, it causes me a little bit of stress.
Correct. And yeah, definitely. And that is one of those things that we mentioned, like the cycle of like, probably they've been carrying that with like throughout generations, your family members, that they normalize that. And now that for instance, now you're in a really amazing posture that you understood that was verbal violence, and you're able to change it. That is an amazing step, and something that you learn by educating others.
And you could really see the impact of words. And I read somewhere where it says, it's easier to get over a physical altercation than it is to get over a verbal altercation. And because you carry that with you, it's still hurtful. Mm-hmm. You still remember that. And so those are the things in our program that we try to do. Healthy relationships, if not it's the most important program project that we're trying to roll out here in Santa Clara County. And the red flags, the green flags, just because I really want to get those that conversation going in a manner that is very clear, I'll tag it over to our co-presenter, Candice.
Well, we are here with our second guest, also another amazing person that knows a lot about this topic. A topic that is very important for us to know, which is domestic violence and healthy relationships. We're going to talk about the red flags, the green flags. What does a healthy relationship look like? So for that reason, we brought this amazing guest with a lot of information, really good information. I personally been to one of the workshops that she provided, and let me tell you that I learned a lot. A lot of these things I thought I knew about healthy relationships, but going to a workshop like that, it actually made me understand that there were a lot more stuff that I wasn't aware of. So please welcome Candice. Candice, thank you very much. If you do not mind, please tell us a little bit more about you, the things that you do.
Sure. So I am the program coordinator for AACI's Asian Women's Home, and part of what I do is providing outreach. So we reach out to the community, we educate them on things that they're interested in learning about or requesting. So things like healthy relationship workshops, and we really try to break it down like an interactive conversation because we don't want it to be like a full-on lesson. We want it to be a conversation where people are engaging and giving us their input and where we're all learning from each other. So like the one that you attended.
That is one of the things that I really liked about that session, that we were able to talk about our experiences.
Yeah, and like real life situations where like you had an example of, because we all know someone, everyone knows someone who's in an unhealthy relationship, right? If not us, it's someone we love, it's someone we know. And so a lot of times like we don't have that guidance on, like there's no perfect relationship, but we don't have guidance on or good examples all the time in the media of what a healthy relationship looks like. And so I like that we have those spaces where people can come in with their questions and ask like, hey, this is going on with my friend, like how can I support, what should I do, how can I have like just a general conversation with them. Yeah.
Correct. Awesome. Thank you very much. Talking about healthy relationships, the boundaries. Tell us a little bit more about the boundaries that we have and that it's healthy for us to have in a healthy relationship.
Yeah, well, here's the thing about boundaries. So I feel like for a long time, just personally, I think a lot of us don't know that we have the right to set them. You know, it starts off with
Preach.
What we learn in the home, right? And like I have 2 daughters. And with my little one, I let her decide like how she wants to saluda our family, right? So a lot of times like growing up, it's like go hug your tia or your tío, like out of respect, of course. You know, those are our cultural, traditional values like Diana was talking about. But I think that takes away a little bit of our power without us even realizing, you know? So I let my daughter decide like if you want to go give Mama a hug and a kiss, that's great. If not, that's okay too. And that gets complicated. Those conversations get tricky. Luckily, my grandma's like fully on board. My mom's on board. Our families are on board now. But we did have to have some of those conversations where it's like, you don't always, of course, be respectful, right? Like saluda a la gente, but you don't have to give a hug or a kiss. Like you can decide a high five, you know, a little fist bump, like however you want to say hi is your choice. Like your body, your rules, your consent.
That is very, very, very powerful because I mean, I personally when I and it's one of the things that I just mentioned with my little cousins, my aunts, they're like, oh, go and give him a hug or something, and I'm like, okay, cool. So it becomes something natural, but I never saw it like that, which is very important. And from now on, it's just like, if you want to give me a hug, it's okay. If not, it's fully fine. You can give high fives.
Yeah, like even my daughter's dad, he asks like, can I have a hug? You know? Or like, can I give a high five? Can I give you a hug? Like, how do you want to say hi, you know?
That's really cute.
And then like, I love my babies, so I want to like smother them and squeeze them and kiss them, but when my daughter's like, Mommy, I need space, even though it hurts me, I have to respect that, you know? I'm like, okay, Mama, you need space right now.
That is pretty cool. That is very nice. Also, when it comes to romantic relationships, we have this thing called like red flags, green flags. What can you tell us about that? I know that for instance, we have some knowledge related to red flags. Oh, that's a red flag. If someone is kind of treating you a certain way, that's a red flag. But at the same time, it's very important to learn more about the green flags. What is something that if we see someone in somebody, if we see certain things in somebody else, we're like, oh, you know what? That's a green flag. That's good. Good to have.
Yeah, and we don't talk about the green flags. We talk about the red flags. It's all over TikTok. We know what a toxica is, right? But
someone breathes and a red flag. You know, it's just like, what's a green flag then? What is something that if I see in like a habit and you're like, oh, you know what? That's a green flag. Let me pay attention to those too.
You know, something that I started talking to even like my girls about is, are you both having fun in the moment?
Okay.
Like, are you both having fun when you're out? You know, because I feel like Diana had already explained that domestic violence or intimate partner violence, we like to use the terms interchangeably, but it's all about power and control, right? So one person has more power and control over the other. Mm-hmm. If, let's say, you're out at a party, you're both having a great time, you're both dancing, and at some point, your partner is starting to make you feel like you shouldn't be having a good time, like you shouldn't be having fun anymore. And if you're being respectful, there's no reason why you can't both enjoy your time, you know? So like having fun. Also, another green flag that we should be looking out for is, do you both have the power to make decisions, right? And it could be about anything, like your money. Do you both have control over your own bank accounts, your own money, right? And I feel like that's one of the first and easiest ways to fall victim into intimate partner violence, because there should not be any financial dependency on one another. It should be mutual. It should be something that you're both discussing, both making decisions about.
There's a good amount of stuff that is happening right now, but one of those things, for instance, I go out with my significant other, right? This person drank a little bit too much. He's doing the most, or they're doing the most, and I'm kind of like secondhand embarrassment, or kind of that's making me a little bit uncomfortable. How do I tell them, you need to chill a little bit?
Yeah.
Because you're kind of embarrassing yourself and my own perspective, right? You know, because that's my own view.
Yeah.
And without being kind of like aggressive or that person taking it in a wrong way.
Yeah, and I'm by no means a relationship expert. I know how to talk about healthy relationships. Does not mean my relationships are perfect by any means. And I don't at all.
That's a really good point, because I don't think there is a perfect relationship. There's always going to be like a bump, and that's what makes it perfect. Because being unperfect is being perfect. You know, like we're going to have those bumps, but it's okay.
You're gonna learn about each other more.
Correct.
And more. Yeah. So when it comes to like drinking and things like that, so again, my relationship is by no means perfect. It's been a journey. It's been several years of trial and error and practice, and practice makes not perfect but better, I always say. So one of the things that my partner and I have established now is before we go out, we let each other know, okay, if one of us is doing too much, right? Not like it's a race, like who's gonna get drunk faster, but it's like we established this rule, like, hey, I'm gonna call you out if you're doing too much, or I'm gonna start bringing you water when I feel like you should bring it down, right? Because I care about my partner. I care about their health, just like they care about mine. So if I'm drinking too much, start bringing me some water, tell me to calm down, you know what I mean? Like, it's okay to call each other out. But going back to boundaries, we established that right before going out. So when we're in the car, going on our way, in the Uber, whatever, we're like, okay, if one of us does too much, like, let's call each other out. And that's part of a healthy relationship too, being able to trust that you can have that open, honest conversation with your partner without fear that, like, oh my God, they're going to get mad at me, they're going to abuse me, they're going to yell at me, I can't speak up for myself, or when I feel uncomfortable. No, that's part of boundaries, right? So I say establishing that first, or setting that rule in the beginning, and then feeling okay. Of course, not embarrass them in front of everybody, pulling them aside and saying, hey, let's slow down a little bit.
Yes, it's important to have like that, to learn the proper vocabulary to use. For instance, a situation like that is like, are you okay? Because I feel like it's kind of like making sure that you don't feel that you're picking on them in a negative way.
Yeah, for sure. It's the same with sex. Like, it should be at a comfortable pace. If at any point one person is going further than the other, or too fast for the other, you should feel comfortable enough to say, hey, like, I want to slow down right now, or let's bring it down a notch,
Yeah, and when it comes to sexual health and everything, also at the same with our physical kind of thing of, if somebody's calling you out for like the way that you look physically, that also is the type of violence, emotional violence. Is it or no?
Yeah, for sure. Like, nobody should be controlling you. You should never feel controlled to the point where you can't speak up for yourself. I think it should be an open conversation again, being comfortable and honest with each other and saying like, hey, like, you know, I feel uncomfortable when you wear this, right? Using I statements. And then ultimately, like, you're going to decide what you're most comfortable with in your relationship or not, right? If I want to dress like this and this is it, and I don't care who says anything about it, this is how I'm going to dress.
Correct.
Right? If it's like, hey, I don't mind you dressing like that, but when we go around my grandma, can we bring it down? You know what I mean? Like, there has to be those conversations.
Okay,
you know?
True.
Agreement.
What about the cycle of abuse? What can you tell us about it?
Oof, okay. So, we were just talking about this morning, actually, Diana and I, how it's not just a cycle of abuse in a relationship sometimes. Sometimes, like she mentioned it too, sometimes it's a generational cycle, right? Like, my grandparents have been abusive with each other, and now it's normal, and that's just how we communicate, right? It's normalized. And then my parents are in an abusive relationship, and that's just how it goes. And if those are the type of examples that we're seeing in our own homes, on TV, in the music that we listen to, like in the media, then it's normalized, right? So it's not just always a cycle in your relationship. It's also sometimes generational cycles being passed on. And it's so hard, so hard to unlearn things. And you know how many times on average it takes a survivor to leave an abusive relationship?
4, I think.
7. On average. It depends, right? Yeah. Some people may have, shorter, easier times escaping. Some take longer than 7 times. But just like imagine that. 7 tries trying to leave this person and going back.
And sometimes we it's challenging for us as allies, and this is another conversation, how to be a good ally, because if someone doesn't leave the person in the first try, you're like, what are you waiting for? And the third time you're like, you won that. So how can I be a good ally?
Yeah, well, first of all, language matters. It's not so much that people don't want to leave. Sometimes it's that they don't know how, don't know what they deserve, don't recognize that they're in an unhealthy relationship. Sometimes there's so many barriers and risks that come with leaving. It's more dangerous for a survivor to leave their partner. Like, when we see, I think it's a 75% risk increase that happens when a survivor tries to leave their partner.
I didn't know that anyway. I learned that recently, and it's crazy. And
that's when we see, unfortunately, homicides happening, or femicides, like we like to call them, or murder-suicides. Like, the partner will kill their victim and then kill themselves. And so we never really get closure. We never really get an understanding of what exactly happened. But we know that violence starts to increase when somebody tries to escape. And it goes back to the power and control thing. Because if a survivor leaves their partner, then their partner no longer has power and control over them. So, did that answer your question?
It did fully. And it's a really good topic. It's amazing to bring that up, because when it comes to the cycle of abuse, I see it now with my younger family members. When and this family member is a really toxic relationship because it's a lot of jealousy. But they see it normal because they have seen this with his parents. So it's just they need to learn a little bit more about these topics.
Yeah.
What about cultural? Now that we're jumping into this, cultural and social influence.
Yeah, just look at where our society's at right now. The fact that we're in a patriarchal society, right? We're not exactly in a patriarchal society, but I think that when a man is in power, we're basically in a patriarchal society, especially, not to get political, but the person who's going to be in power now, And we know like where they stand on women's rights and trying to control people's bodies. And
don't get me there, cause
okay. But it's so difficult. Like all of that plays a part into our relationships, the type of society that we live in, the type of cultural norms that we get. Like for us being Latinos, like machismo is so common. It's so normal, right? The way that we talk to each other, right? Even it's so crazy because I don't want to take away from my family values or the way that we show cariño, but sometimes even like my mom will be like, ay, mijo, like, you know, like con cariño, and it's like so much love, but it's like little things like that like we have to establish, like this is love and this is not love, you know, like making that very clear. Like cultural barriers start to affect our relationship when it becomes like the family versus self, right? So like a lot of times, especially as parents, we put our kids first, right? And if we share children with the person who is causing us harm, it's so much harder to leave because we share a family with them, right? And then we consider, how is this going to affect not just me if I leave, but now my kids? What are my parents going to think of me? What are my tias and tios? Like, now there's shame happening in the family, right? And there's like stigma that happens, and there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah, and talking about stigma and jumping into this other topic of like the relationships among the LGBTQ community, because this is cultural, and I know that in Latino community is pretty strong. Not too long ago, one of my my brother's friend, his one of his youngest his oldest brother turned out to be gay, and he got kicked out of his house. So that's kind of like, I know that starting with that, it builds like this huge issue mentally, emotionally, of like being more susceptible, vulnerable to jump into unhealthy relationships because they're already feeling that rejection from their parents.
Oh, for sure.
So it's easier to jump into like unhealthy relationship in their future.
Yeah, for sure. And I know that we talked about this last time, that, you know, the LGBTQ community has higher rates of IPV in their relationships, and it's a lot of times because of that, because they don't know where to go to for support.
And IPV, before we move a little bit, what's IPV?
Intimate partner violence.
Okay.
So it's, we like to use intimate partner violence because it's more inclusive. I think a lot of times we automatically assume that domestic violence is relationship in the home, man and woman, right? Intimate partner is like any partners that are together. So yeah, I think that when we don't have support already at home, it's so much easier for us to fall into these relationships where they're fulfilling one of our needs, which is to give us some type of love and support. It feels good to be in a relationship.
Correct.
But when they know that we're in a vulnerable place where we don't have someone to run to if shit, you know, hits the fan, then it's easier for me to be a victim, right? And so we need to continue to plant those seeds in our families, relationships, our dynamics, and our friend dynamics, and our community dynamics, where people know, like, you have support here. Correct. If that ever you feel unsafe or in an unhealthy relationship, you do know where to go. You know, I hope that my daughters someday know that, you know, they're free to love whoever they want to, but at the end of the day, if they ever get hurt or someone's harming them, they know they can come back home. They know that we love them and we're going to support them, you know. But not everybody has that.
Correct.
Not everybody has a safety net.
Exactly, especially that community that it's been impacted with so many things, and it has to do a lot with rejection, sexual health. You know, like we put ourselves at higher chances of contracting STIs and HIV because we don't have that safe net. We put ourselves, if somebody tells us like, oh, I don't like to use condoms, just to feel kind of welcomed or somebody is accepting us, we decide to not use a condom, you know, like, or to not go get tested. For instance, here in the community and the LGBTQ community center at Billy the Prank, we do testing, and we have seen the numbers that had been somewhat decreasing of getting tested. So it's so we want to kind of like make sure that the people are fully aware of the importance of that, and not only the LGBTQ community, but in the community as a whole.
Mm-hmm. And like what you were saying about rejection, right? Is like we've already lost for the LGBTQ community, right? If they've already lost their family members and their first like foundational knowledge of what love and respect and safety is from their home, right? Their family, then if a partner is telling them, I don't feel comfortable wearing a condom, they've already lost the people who brought them into this world, right? The people who are supposed to be their number one support. They don't want to lose someone else. And so that has a lot to do with it too.
Exactly. Well, Candice, thank you very much for your for this amazing conversation. Thank you for those tips. Is there something that you would like to say just to close it up? A message to the community?
Yeah, I think just continue to have fun, love each other. We need it. We need to trust each other. We need to know who we can go to for support. And for those who are in unhealthy relationships, as an ally, be patient, because it's not always easy to leave. It takes time. It takes understanding. It takes some type of backup plan, to know, like, okay, how am I going to get back on my feet if there's so much dependency with this person? And start building awareness of where the supportive networks are.
Awesome.
And I can give you resources and stuff.
No, yeah. And for instance, your program, I know it's here at San Jose and at AACI. It provides all these resources to the community, which is really good. And it's one of the kind, and it's pretty big.
Yeah, we have shelter, we have housing, transitional housing, free legal services every Thursday. And we have a great staff, a great team. We speak tons of languages. We're here for our community. So if ever, I always say, if ever you or someone needs support, like, know where to turn to, because nobody deserves to be feeling unsafe or in an unhealthy relationship, and there are places where you can go to for help.
Exactly. And one of those things that I'm really, really interested in learning more, or like talking more about, is how to be a better ally. So I would love to have you back to talk about just that portion.
For sure. Say when.
Because it's very important.
Yeah.
It's really important. Awesome. Thank you very much.
No problem.